Austin Anderson will join us at the Kates-Boylston Advances in Funeral Innovations Conference this November 12th and 13th in Houston, Texas. He'll be among a bunch of different people talking about the future of funeral service and some of the technologies that are available and some of the changes that they see coming. We sat down with him for a couple of minutes to get a preview of some of the topics he's going to hit on at the conference. So one of the presentations that we have seen in the past, but we've never seen it from you, is this Rainbox presentation, the virtual reality, and the discussions about how virtual reality can fit into funeral service are some of the most interesting that we have. So what do you hope to get people to understand with your presentation?
I'll start with what I hope first not to do.
Okay.
What I hope to not do is assume that I know everything about this and that I'm there to give a lecture. That's what I don't want to come across as attempting to do. And I'm relatively young, and I know firsthand about a lot of these technologies, grown up with a fair amount of them, and I'm interested in technology just in general, especially this VR, AR technology that's really taking hold in our society today. The real goal is to start a conversation in the industry that really leads into what we hope to accomplish going forward with this technology, because this technology isn't just a fad. We truly believe this technology is going to take hold one way or another, and we'd much rather it come from inside the funeral industry, death care in general, and have people who have had experience in the industry for many years become involved. And so what I really want in the process of giving the presentation is a good communication back and forth with the audience in order to determine, what are we going to do about the fact that this technology is coming. You're not going to be able to stop it. It is inevitable. And so with those facts in mind, we want to be able to learn as much about this technology as we can and the right way to implement it when it comes to traditional funerals and traditional memorial for people. We want to be able to use this in the right way. And I have a few examples in the presentation of what many may see as the wrong way, which is exactly the type of thing I want to show people, that this stuff is coming, it's happening. People are taking it into their own hands to incorporate it in their own way. And so to start a good conversation within the industry to figure out what we're going to do about it, rather than just, sit by the wayside and just let it tackle us from outside the industry. If, Silicon Valley gets their hands on this sort of technology and just starts developing applications people can use, it could be harmful in the long run as far as memorialization or how that technology is going to be used in the future when it comes to memorialization and funeral services.
Yeah, especially with the complete virtual reality. But let's talk for a second about augmented reality, because can you talk about like the difference between virtual and augmented and talk about where Rainbox fits in?
Absolutely. So we'll start with the virtual. I think most people think of virtual reality because you think of the headsets, and really what those headsets do is they place you in an environment completely where you are fully immersed in an environment inside the goggles, and you see nothing of the outside world. And in that environment, you can interact, you can change it at will, you can use it for basically whatever you want. Watch movies, you can play games. This is a sort of internal experience that you're having within the goggles. And the augmented reality is a sort of midway pass through when it comes to the goggles. And Apple's newest VR headset is doing this very well, and to probably the best point we've seen so far, where you can completely see your outside environment, right? But you have these maybe apps or computer screens, almost as if you're seeing them through your own eyes, and they are in your real environment, but they are not real themselves.
And one of the concerns has always been like people say that, this is really just too far away. These glasses are too expensive. And I think that's one of the things that makes people not see the urgency. I think the idea of the cost is something that undermines the urgency.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the status quo when it comes to any technology. I mean, you think of back in the day, your plasma screen TVs, whatever, in the 2000s, that, oh my gosh, it's so thin and it provides such a good picture, and they're thousands of dollars. Now you can go to Walmart and get a 4K Ultra HD TV, flatter than any flat screen ever in the 2000s, for a couple $100, and it's almost no big deal. Same thing with phones. Phones started off very expensive, and the good phones have gotten cheap, and the cheap phones have gotten good. As like to, this stuff is,
That's a good way to put
yeah,
it.
this stuff is changing super fast. It gets better and better every single year. New features, new technologies incorporated into them. And now smartphones have just become the norm. Everybody, if you don't have a smartphone, you're almost cast out of society. You can't do certain things. Anything from getting movie tickets to getting on a plane. Without a smartphone, it's just twice as hard or impossible in some cases for a lot of these things. So it's just a technology that got incorporated into society. And, if you weren't with it, then you got left behind.
I want to tell you about a small tantrum I had. I went to a baseball game a couple weeks ago, and I had to download the app to have the tickets, and I was furious. I'm like, I wish I could just have a paper ticket. And then my brother called and said, I'm going to be an hour late. And I remember back in the 80s having to wait outside and say, all right, how much longer are we going to wait for this idiot before we go into the game? And that's a thing that doesn't happen anymore. And once I think we start to see how we get away from how icky it feels and how much it can improve our lives, I think that's another hill that's getting easier and easier to get over.
And of course, the only reason they're here is because they have improved our lives in such dramatic ways, where it's almost like you couldn't think back to a day when we didn't have these technologies. And it's really funny coming from me, because I'm 26. I have an 8-month-old son, and he is going to grow up knowing nothing but smartphones and VR goggles and all this stuff. I'm still just in that sweet spot where I remember my mom having a flip phone. I remember the gigantic dinosaur TVs. I remember all that stuff. It's almost like a dream I woke up from. I can't remember all sorts of things like, the older generations can. If you're 40, 50 years old, you remember a time without smartphones at all. You lived your life that way. It was normal. And nowadays that past is fading, and the future is only getting more and more technologically immersive. And that's just something that you can't change. It's just something inevitable that's coming. And you either adapt or, like I said, you get left behind.
And that's one of the things that's been very difficult, especially in funeral service, is, this was an industry that was not only slow to embrace technology, but very slow
Right.
to embrace technology. And now as they try to catch up, it's like one step forward, two steps back. And it can be overwhelming to every time you hear a talk, like, this is what you're not doing now. And you're like, well, I just did all the stuff you said last.
I just caught up. What do you? Yeah, it's gonna be tough. And I think for the funeral industry in general, and I don't think we're alone here. I think there are a lot of industries where, especially the family owned, passed down from father to son or to daughter, that have lived on for generations, they're sort of the last to incorporate some of this stuff. And a big reason a lot of large corporations are more up to date is because they adapt to this stuff very quickly. And, the family owned, small community, small towns, it's hard for them to get their hands or their minds, grasped around this new world that we're living in. It just seems to be going so quickly. It's hard to really pin it down.
Excellent. And finally, what do you hope the real takeaway is? Like, what do you hope people say, boy, I'm glad I came and heard this
Right.
for?
If nothing, I hope that people will be able to come in, not knowing anything about this, and then be able to leave with a strong opinion, whether that opinion is this is terrible, this can never happen, we need to stop this, or this is terrible, we need to adapt to this right away, or give me some of this VR goggles right now, I want to incorporate this immediately. I want people to have opinions, and I want people to share those opinions, make their own personal arguments, make their own personal analysis of this stuff, because probably the biggest takeaway I want people to have is this is coming, whether I like it or not. And I'm going to do something, whether, it is fight against it, fight for it, embrace it, lean away from it. People need to recognize that you can't just sit back and expect this to blow over, because it will not. It will come. And I just hope people realize that it's better that we adapt to it. It's better that it comes from inside the industry when it comes to issues like this and funeral services and memorialization. People's loved ones are the most important thing in people's lives. And if this technology that is inevitably coming can help in some way, I think we should find a way where it does help.
That is absolutely fantastic. And thank you for that. We will see you in Houston.
Okay, see you then.
If you're interested in coming and would like to get $50 off your registration fee when you go to events.katesboylston.com and click on Advances in Funeral Innovations, you can type in the discount code FSI Podcast. That is all caps, all one word, FSI PODCAST, for $50 off. We're going to have a great time. There'll be a lot of great speakers, as I mentioned. Austin is just one of them. One of the things that everyone always says about our events at Kates-Boylston is, in addition to getting some great talks, you get to meet with great people in between, and the just chatting. It's not even networking. It's just getting up to date with what's going on in other funeral markets with other funeral directors is always worth hearing. So we'd love it if you'd join us. I would love to see you there. That is November 12th and 13th in Houston. And for $50 off, use FSI PODCAST, all one word, all caps, and a link to the registration page in the show notes. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.